So I wrote a book. Okay, well, it's kind of a baby book because it is a guided journal called Too Smart for This, which is designed to help you banish self-doubt and cultivate self-love through a series of journal prompts that you can complete over 4 quarters. I'm so excited. This was such a labor of love and so much fun to make, and I want to talk to you guys about the whole process if you're also interested in getting a book deal, writing a book, and I just want to share my experience. By no means am I a expert in this world, but I'm going to answer your questions and talk you through everything that I did, and we'll talk a little bit about the book too. So let's get started. So if you all are new here, hi, my name is Alexis Barber, and I am the founder of Too Collective, which is a modern wellness brand that helps ambitious women live more intentional lives. And I'm also a Wharton MBA candidate. I'm about to finish up getting my MBA here at Wharton. And prior to that, I went to Northwestern for undergrad, and then I worked at Google for about 3 years, and later at YouTube, where I was on our strategy team for YouTube Shorts and working with top creators and brands to help them with their content strategy. Then I left and pursued Too Collective full-time while I was getting my MBA at Wharton. That's what I've been up to for the past couple of years. If you're new here, a huge part of my mission is helping ambitious women, so women in particular, feel empowered to step into their skills and build a life on their own terms, because a lot of times we've been told that we can't do things. We're too much, we're too loud, we're too nice, we're too mean, whatever it is. And whatever that does, it really holds us back from creating a lot of magic in the world. Because when women are empowered, we do amazing things, and amazing people and communities and inventions and opportunities come out of women being their best. And I really believe in helping more women do that. And I believe the way to do that is through self-reflection, knowing what you want, and living an intentional life. So that's a little bit about me and the whole brand ethos. And now I'll walk you through a little bit about how this came to be, answering your question. The first question is, why is it a guided journal? Like, what is it about? And why is it not a book? I love this question so much because I did not set out an intention to write a book or to become an author. I'll tell you more about that in the timeline of this. But a journal is what's right for my audience, because I talk about self-reflection and I talk about connecting with yourself and the importance of journaling so much on this show. I have almost 200 episodes where that's the point of a lot of it. And I also found that was what was most helpful for me. And there's a plenty out there that can help you in terms of self-help. There's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of books, and I absolutely intend to contribute to that with my own book one day. But I didn't feel like I was experienced enough to write out all of my experiences in a cohesive way. I didn't feel like I could write a self-help book because I hadn't necessarily gotten to that place on my own. But what I had been able to do really well was talk to myself, connect with myself, evolve, change, and be humble enough to say, you know what, I don't like that I did that. I don't like who I am in that situation. I'm going to change it. Or recognize hey, I'm reacting really weirdly in that situation. Why is that happening? I know that I need to go look at my past and see what my core wound is there and be able to process it and approach my life differently. Because I'm an ambitious person. I've told you guys all these entrepreneurial ventures I've been doing. I absolutely love building and having a really fun and exciting life. And I honestly believe that the best way to do that, or the only way to do that and do it with a sense of fulfillment, is by constantly reflecting and by constantly getting deeper and more connected to yourself so that you can feel that happiness and that excitement when it hits you in the face. One day I will write a book. I've talked to you a little bit about what's really available in the book in my latest podcast episode, so go check that out. And that gives you a bit of a deep dive into it, and we'll get into that at the end of this video as well. But that's a little bit of the whole breakdown of why I chose to do a journal. And I definitely would like to write a second book. And I'd also like to get into fiction at some point too. I'm definitely considering myself an author moving forward. So the next is, how did you get a book deal? I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the behind the scenes of what is going on in the publishing world. So there are book agents, there are publishing houses, and there are authors. And essentially, as an author, you get in contact with an agent, and these are agencies that are pretty small, or there's even larger ones, I don't know. But essentially, you and that agent work together and you create a book proposal. And this book proposal is basically an overview of like who you are. Your agency will typically have like a template for you to fill out for this, but it's an overview of who you are, what your background is, and a synopsis of what the book would be about, who the target audience is, how you plan to promote it, your connections, if you're going to have any that will help you promote it. Because what you have to remember here is that these publishing houses who are going to be receiving this book proposal, they have a set amount of titles that they can work on. They make a huge investment into providing you with an editor, a huge investment into marketing and into the actual back end of creating the book and using their connections to disperse it. They want this book to sell. This is about selling something, that your proposal is about convincing these houses that A, now is the right time for your book, B, it's a really strong story or a really strong offering, to C, a very clear audience that you've identified and already have inroads with and can connect to. So that's sort of what a book proposal is going to look like. It's different for every agency, but that's what you sort of start with. So if I were to write another book, for example, I would start with a book proposal that goes through all of those different things. Then your agent typically should have contacts with the big publishing houses, and they will send this around to different houses and you'll set up some meetings. And so in those meetings, you'll talk to the team, see how you feel about things, see what their vision is for it, whatever, and they'll decide whether or not they pass or whether or not they decide to go with your book. After that, there's a couple of months of negotiations for your contract, and then you sign a contract, and then that's when it hits Publishers Marketplace, which is this this is like the world where it shows, okay, this person has a book deal with this person. So this whole timeline that I've just talked about can take 6 to 8 months. So you'll develop your book proposal, figure it out with your agent. Your agent will shop it around to different publishing houses. You'll meet with those publishing houses, decide that you want to do a deal together, sign a contract, and then you start writing, okay? So what this looks like for me is one of my listeners, Ashley, reached out to me. She's a book agent because I had mentioned something about wanting to create a journal for Too Smart for This as part of my podcast. And I hadn't thought about ever doing that with a publishing house. I had thought of maybe I would write one and then self-create it or self-publish it. But when I had looked into that in the past, it was pretty expensive for not really great margins. And I didn't really want to invest that money because I was already working on our robe business, which was doing really well at the time. So I wasn't really focused on making a journal or anything. I was more focused on my other products. And so I thought this would be a cool idea. And she talked to me about it. We put together a proposal and we sent it off to different publishing houses. So we had our first conversation in May of 2023. And then I submitted that proposal to her by June, end of June maybe. And it was August and September that we were chatting with different publishing houses. And I met with Penguin Random House, Tarcher Perigee, my team, in late September. And that's when they decided they wanted to greenlight the book, and we got into contract negotiations. I signed the contract in December of 2023, and then I got started writing, and I wrote over the course of my second semester at Wharton, and I believe I submitted the final version of everything in, I believe, March or April, and then we got into edits and stuff like that in May, and by June it was completed. And then over June to July we worked on the cover, and then in September is when we started planning for marketing, and then we announced it in November, and then we've been doing pre-orders now, and now the book is finally out and available for you to purchase, and that is in March. So this has overall been almost a 2-year process, and that's very typical, and it can even be longer, particularly when you're writing something like a 400,000 word novel or something like that. It's much more intensive if you are writing a book that's fully a book. There's going to be a lot more edits and a lot more on the timeline when you're writing a full book. But as I was writing a journal, there's writing in it and there's journal prompts in it, and it took a lot of time and energy, but it's not by any means a 200,000 word self-help book. You know what I mean? With that being said, I would add on time if you were writing a full book as well. Someone asked, how did you do this while you were also in school? I'm crazy. Honestly, just really good time management skills. And I had a really good editor. So what happens when you sign a contract with a publishing house is that they give you an editor, and that's who you are primarily working with. So I had a great editor, her name is Lauren, and I would submit a chapter of the book to her, and then she would send back edits through Word. I would take those edits back, send it back to her, and then I would also work on the second chapter of the book with her edits in mind. And that was what was really helpful, and I think finding an editor you really work well with is really important in this part of the journey. So highly recommend that. And ways you can look for that are sort of like your communication style, looking at previous works they've worked on, things like that, and just developing a sense of like trust with them. How I did it was I would wake up at 5 a.m., as I still do now, and I would get started on writing early, pretty early, I would say. And I would just sort of like let it all come through my brain, and then I would edit it once or twice and then send it over. And then they would get their edits back and forth, back and forth. And the way I was able to do this in school was really just through time management. I do think doing the robes, doing school, doing influencing full time was really hard on my mental health. And I've talked about how that led to me burning out and the difficulties I faced through that in my Substack, but I ultimately am so proud of how this came out, and I really think that it is what women everywhere need in order to become more familiar with themselves, be more clear on what they want, and also to deal with the realities of life and know that they have frameworks to fall back on when life throws them curveballs. And that's how you really truly build self-trust and self-confidence, is when you know you can handle anything, not when you think you're perfect. And we've been orienting to being perfect for so long as women, but the real sense of confidence that we get comes when we are able to trust ourselves. So that's sort of how I did that and why I did it. And that was the whole process on the back end. Some tips that I would give you for this are A, that it is going to be a lot more time intensive than you think. B, you need to be very clear on exactly what you want, especially on the marketing side, and especially like how you want your book to be perceived. And C, it's really important to be really specific with how you want your cover to look, have really strong inspiration, and just be very firm in what you want for your piece of art to come to life, and know where you are willing to make concessions, and have an agent that is willing to advocate for you. So I had Ashley, my agent, who was, if there was times where timelines were difficult for me to meet, or I wasn't happy with the way that like a visual was coming out, she was able to advocate for me, and that's a really important thing to have. And then also that it's going to take a lot of time, and it's not financially like the unlock to everything. You don't make $1 million on a book deal until you've been like a seasoned author for a long time. So don't quit your day job when you get a book deal. It is a side thing that you do until it can become your main thing, because the way that the payment structure works, at least for me it was you sign your deal. Upon signing, you get a fourth of it. Upon completion of your manuscript, you get a fourth of it. Upon publishing, you get a fourth of it. And then after a certain amount of time that the book is out, you get a fourth of it. So, and your agent takes 10% of your book deal as well. So just know that. And so for me, it's like, this has been over 2 years. It's a really amazing opportunity for me as well, but it is just a supplement to my income. It's not my main income stream. So keep that in mind as well. And don't quit your day job until you are a massive, famous Elizabeth Gilbert level writer. Elizabeth Gilbert, by the way, wrote Eat, Pray, Love while she had, and many other works, while she had a day job. So keep that in mind. Now, as I did in my latest podcast video, I'm going to walk you through what the Too Smart for This journal has. So this journal is broken into 4 quarters, and I don't care if you do it in order. I don't care if you do it whenever you feel like it. I don't care if you do it out of order, or if you just pop in and open a prompt and that just feels good to you that day. There's no right or wrong way to do this journal. It's just structured in this way because that's how I like to structure things, okay? But I'm also an impulsive person, and I'm not always like structured with the way that I self-reflect, because healing isn't linear and neither is your relationship with yourself. So we have 4 sections, and the first section is called How Did We Get Here? And this is where you're really exploring your childhood stuff. So why your family is the way it is, what's your relationship with money, and how does that relate to your relationship with your siblings? So getting a little bit like, hey, who am I and why do I act like this? The second section is about finding your vision. So figuring out what you want for your future. And I give you a series of prompts to figure out if you're settling or not, whether you like versus love something, and then for you to get very authentically honest about what you actually want out of your life in terms of relationships. We cover everything from relationships, career, your personal life, and your health, all of it in that section. It's really, really fun to dream, and I encourage you to have more fun with dreaming. The third section is your personal handbook, okay? So by the end of the third section, you should know, I know what makes me feel good. I know how to act in order to build my life the way that I want to build it, and I am prepared to do so whenever I need it. So if you are facing a new transition or you're facing a, change in your life, you can say, okay, this is the type of routine that's going to help me and that I'm going to stick with no matter what. And this is something that makes me feel good when I'm starting to get overwhelmed every week. Here's my non-negotiables and boundaries in my friendships, relationships, and how I'm going to act when I'm faced with a new situation at work. You know yourself, and that personal handbook is what's going to help you build your self-confidence up. And what's really going to help you build your self-trust is the fourth section of the book, which is frameworks for real life. So in this section, we are getting into everything that you could do when life throws you a curveball, okay? So we start this off with really digging into your sense of self-worth, because self-trust, self-confidence are all great, but you can't really have any of that unless you really have a strong sense of self-worth that even if you make a mistake, even if something doesn't go your way, even if you find yourself in a situation where you're not proud of your behavior or how you're acting, you're still a worthy human being, and you can still find that trust and love yourself again, even when you're not perfect. And then we jump into, what are you going to do if you run into a bout of grief? What are you going to do when you get randomly laid off from your job? And by creating a framework for how we're going to react to the inevitable difficulties that we'll face, you then grant yourself the gift of strong self-trust, and you know that you'll be able to handle anything. Because as I said before, true confidence is not being perfect. True confidence is knowing that you'll be able to be okay no matter what happens next. Because that's the only way you can feel excited about your decisions, you know what I mean? That is what the book is all about. That's a little bit about how it came to be. And now that it's available, you can pick it up in bookstores. You can order it online. You can order it down below on Amazon. I would really, really encourage you to support your local bookstores, however. So I will have a list of those down below as well. And again, I'm just really grateful that I have the community, that I have the opportunity to be able to share this information with you guys, and that I get to connect with you as my job, and that this even came to be because I wouldn't have been able to do it without those of you who tune in to the podcast every week, those of you who engage with my YouTube vlogs or to follow me on TikTok. Like, this means so much to me that I get to share this with you. So please, please, please know that everything you do, every time that you engage with my content, it really means the world to me. So thank you so much. Make sure to check this out wherever you can, and I will see you in the next episode or in the next vlog or when I see you on the internet. Thank you so much, and don't forget, you are too smart to not love yourself.